Hi, this is Kelly. You're listening to U.S. Senate candidate Joshua Mahony on the Two Broads Talking Politics podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, you can find more episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found. Hey everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, and I am joined today by Josh Mahony, who is running for U.S. Senate from Arkansas. Hi, Josh.
Hi, Kelly. How you doing? Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. So this is one in a series of episodes we're doing, talking to people running for Senate from all over the country. There's a lot of talk about we got to win back the Senate, but nobody mentions states like Arkansas in that equation. So I think it's important that we broaden our scope of what we're thinking about. So I would love to hear from you, sort of your background and why you're running for Senate.
First off, you talk about people not mentioning places like Arkansas. I think it's important that we challenge races everywhere, because if we're not talking to these states where we've, had setbacks or we've lost our footing as Democrats, I think that's a losing proposition because it just keeps meaning we're going to give up more and more territory. And, when so many people identify with progressive values, but we're not getting out and visiting with the people in the states that have turned red, we're still going to keep losing presidential elections as a long-term goal. That's kind of how I see that. So we've got to go back and make sure that we're in these states instead of ceding territory, but at least making a stand there so they have the chance to be competitive. My background, though, is much more in the nonprofit area. I spent a lot of time working around access to education. I was president of the Ozark Literacy Council here in Arkansas, which is the largest nonprofit ESL school in the state. I was also president of the Arkansas Single Parent Scholarship Fund that Secretary Clinton started when she was First Lady of Arkansas. And that program works to provide single parents at the poverty line with funding to make sure they have the ability to get an education, whether you think of that as a college degree or a trade or a certification. And I was on that board for almost a decade and led us through a redesign to make sure that we were catering to all those education options. It's something I'm really proud of.
What made you decide then to run for Senate? What makes you want to take on this really big role?
Well, it's something, it's really interesting. My wife and I are both nonprofit people. And she went back and got an MBA at Duke and decided to kind of go into the corporate area to see what she could do to drive change there. And on my side, I've seen the role that policy plays in education particularly. And, I felt like I had done as much as I could on the outside. And so I wanted to get into the policy side of things. And, when you look at a place like Arkansas, a lot of the South, a lot of the Midwest, the same challenges that our scholars were facing are the story of, the country in a lot of ways. People are working really, really hard just to get by every week. And it's not even the poverty line. This is just the state of things in a lot of the country. And education, access to health care, access to good paying jobs is something that not only do we need in communities in Arkansas and across the state, it's something that we need, very much in the heartland of the country. And I felt that getting into something like the Senate is a place to make some very broad changes to fight for those things. And of course, here in Arkansas, my opponent's Tom Cotton. And, he hasn't had an interest in my state since he got elected. He's a packaged Coke product, and as soon as he went to Washington, he forgot all about it. So there's a lot of reasons for me to get in, but the big ones definitely are around that education and economic message. But it's also just so the people of Arkansas have someone working for them that actually listens to them.
I agree that it's very important that we fight everywhere, that we are challenging every race. But you've got an uphill battle running a Senate race in Arkansas. Tom Cotton, in his first race, won a pretty good share of the vote. And, Democrats didn't manage to pick up any of the House seats in 2018. But we're looking at a year that's going to have super high turnout, possibly the highest turnout ever. What do you see as sort of the path to victory? What do you see as your way to inspire people to come out and vote for a Democrat, even if maybe they haven't voted or haven't voted for a Democrat in a long time?
You hit the nail on the head with inspiring people to come out. We have to work to build somewhat of a new voter universe, but we've got to go talk to the people that have been disenfranchised and disillusioned too. We had a lot of communities in Arkansas that didn't show up to vote in 2016. There was something like 140,000 registered African-American voters that didn't vote in the presidential election. And, if we're visiting with our communities, we have the right economic message, which I think that we absolutely do. And my own history in the state of working for Arkansans around the nonprofit sector and access to education, people know me as someone that wants to work for the people in the state. I think that we can get people out. And I also think part of that is being a real Democrat, too, and a real progressive. We've tried to kind of run moderate, middle-of-the-road campaigns in Arkansas, and it doesn't excite people. And I think in a lot of situations, people feel like they don't have much of a choice, so why would they get excited? So we're going to make sure we run as a capital D Democrat as well.
So you ran in 2018 in a House race as well in a very difficult district. What were the things that you think you sort of learned from that run for office that are going to help you this time around?
It's interesting. So I loved running that race. And one of the things in Arkansas that's happened is we lost all of our kind of institutional knowledge on the Democratic side. When President Clinton got elected and went to D.C., a lot of the people that would have ran for office in the generation between him and my generation, they all went to work in Washington, D.C. And so they didn't mentor anybody. There was nobody there to kind of bring people into progressive politics and show them how to work on campaigns. Our state party did an admirable job, but they don't have a lot of resources. And so even just having the experience of running that race, and, we did it with some very clever college students and some volunteers, and, we really busted our butts. And this district that I ran in, it's the 3rd Congressional District of Arkansas, plus 19 Republican district. It's been red since 1966. Bill Clinton ran here in 1974, and he almost flipped it. But beyond that, it's remained challenging. But I think really kind of having the seasoned approach this time around of knowing what we need to do, having people that have worked on a campaign when, before 2018, we had a lot of folks that just didn't even know what it was like to be involved, but they found avenues like Indivisible and Moms Demand Action to start working on the ground. And now they're pros. They're great folks. And, of course, running a Senate race, too, we attract a lot more talent from outside of the state, too, that we can bring in and have them impart some of their knowledge to our volunteers that have come up from the last election cycle going into this one.
What are you hearing from those people, both the activists, the people who are going to be helping out with the campaign, and then just other people that you're talking to around the state? What is the energy like? What are the people feeling on the ground?
There's a lot of good energy. Nobody went home after 2018. It was a tough cycle, but people got involved, I think, for the first time in politics in Arkansas. And, we flipped a couple of state house seats, but we also lost a couple too. So it was kind of a net even return, but nobody was defeated by it. Instead, all those people stayed and they showed up for the first meetings right after the 2018 election. And they're like, okay, here's what we did right. Here's what we wish we could have done better. And here's what we're going to do. And I tell you what, that's just inspiring to see. it makes it a lot easier for me to get up every day and decide to, get into the office and do call time all day and all those, not fun parts of being a candidate. But the energy is good. And then in regards to Cotton particularly, the sense that he's forgotten about Arkansas is so palpable that he's widely viewed as a candidate that's beatable, even in a place like Arkansas, especially when you start talking about health care, when you start talking about farming. He's always attacked the farm bill. He's been very supportive of the tariffs, which have just been terrible to our farmers in our state. And we're an agricultural state.
One of the things that we're hearing in a lot of the agricultural states in the middle of the country is about, both the way that farmers are hurting right now, but also the ways that climate change is affecting the farmland. There's lots of flooding going on. Do you think that climate change is something that people in Arkansas are starting to see as a real problem? Do you have specific things that you would like to see the government doing to address some of those problems?
We're certainly coming around to it. Before 2018, climate change was not as much on the radar in the state of Arkansas. But I can tell you, as we got closer to Election Day, I was very pleasantly surprised by the number of people on the right that were very interested in climate change and the effects that it was going to have on Arkansas. Because if we don't do something about it, Arkansas is not going to be an agricultural state. We're not going to have the climate for it. And of course, you mentioned the flooding. We had some record flooding here in Arkansas that we've never had before. And, even with growing rice and soybeans, things that are a little bit more acceptable to higher water levels, it's still a real problem because you end up with a lot of silt and things like that are keeping light out. So they're very cognizant of it. And I think that everyone would like to see something done. For myself, I'm a huge advocate for sustainability. And, I've always supported a carbon tax. Not something that, the common person is in need for, but where that money comes out of the corporations and things like that goes back into helping, the community and our farmers and things like that.
Do you think that there is a role for Arkansas to play in, sort of driving some of that green energy, using land, perhaps farmland, as, wind farms and solar farms?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that I'm really excited about, we produce aluminum in Arkansas. We've got some of I consider the best shipping company in the world in our backyard here. There's a lot of opportunity to manufacture around the solar panel here. But on top of that, wouldn't it be great when you have a field that you're waiting for the minerals to re-enrich, to put solar panels on it to offset your energy costs? And, by the end of the day, that creates a cheaper product that's harvested, and ultimately that turns into a cheaper product when we're at the stores buying our groceries. One of the other things that's big in Arkansas is we have Tyson and ConAgra that are poultry industry companies. And I always think that it would be great to have incentives through taxes and deductions that would allow poultry growers to put solar panels on top of their poultry houses. And again, you're driving down their energy consumption costs, and that's going to turn into a cheaper product when people are going to the stores to buy their chicken or whatever else that they're going to use to cook dinner. And it's been interesting in Arkansas, too, to see Entergy go around and start looking at building solar farms in different areas. A couple of our cities have made great strides in building solar farms. Clarksville, that's just down the road from me, their entire municipality runs all their civic municipal power off of solar panels. I also like wind energy, although some of my friends that really love the scenic views don't like the site pollution. So it's something I'm a little bit more careful about. I think we have to pick and choose where we would do wind energy to be cognizant of Arkansas as the natural state and its outdoors, but there's certainly a place for it. And I think having a diversified energy portfolio is good for everybody.
So you mentioned running as sort of a true progressive, and I've seen pictures of you at a Pride Parade recently. I don't think people think of Arkansas as being sort of a hotbed of LGBTQ residents, but what is that sort of the social issues? How do those play out in Arkansas? Obviously, there are cities in Arkansas where perhaps there's more progressive values, but I think there's a lot of concern right now with Trump being in power and that really empowering people to have sort of hateful ideas. Is that something you see at all? Do you think that people in Arkansas by and large are really ready to be very welcoming of people of all sorts of different backgrounds?
I think by and large in Arkansas, you're going to find that people are not concerned about other folks' relationships, who they choose to love, who they choose to marry. They want to make sure that they've got a good paying job so they can provide for themselves and their families. Being in the South, in a state like Arkansas, everyone's incredibly courteous and incredibly polite. And you may come across people that have views that are not as, pro-equality as I might like them to be, but they're not going to be in your face about it. They're not going to be rude about it. They'll hold that to themselves. But, I think that it is important to be a vocal ally. So the folks that do feel emboldened to promote hate know that they're wrong and know that hate's not going to be tolerated, and to push back on the rhetoric that comes out of the White House right now. And it's not even just LGBTQ. In my area here in the northwest part of the state, a lot of the industry and businesses here were built by immigrant communities. And, those communities have stayed here. They've become parts of our families and our neighbors and our coworkers, and a lot of their children and grandchildren are citizens. And so, pathways to citizenship and immigration reform are also very important to me. And the rest of the state may not always have transparency to that because they don't have a lot of people in their community that are immigrants, and they may not have as many people that are LGBTQ that are open about it. But I think it's important that they see that you can be a leader, that you can work for people, and that you can be accepting and supportive and, love your neighbor, whoever they are.
I think there's probably a lot of interest right now around the country into defeating Tom Cotton. A lot of his rhetoric has not been super popular. What are some ways that people who are perhaps outside of Arkansas can be helping out with your campaign?
Well, as always, we love donations. We are, obviously not taking corporate money. And small dollar donations are what's going to keep us in play and help us win this race. But, also spreading the word is fantastic. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about Senator Cotton is that he's got all the terrible rhetoric of Trump, but he doesn't have any of the economic messages or anything like that Trump will push out now and then, or talking about protecting workers. It's not there. And everyone is aware of that. And I think as we go forward in the race, remind people that, Tom Cotton is pretty terrible on what he says, and keep the fire out there that we need to get him out of office. I want to get into office to make sure that the people of Arkansas have good paying jobs, that they've got quality health care, and they don't have to worry about going into debt. And if they can't afford it, we're going to make sure that they've got it. And also making sure that they have access to education, whether that's going to be a degree-seeking path or trade or anything else like that. And we want to make sure people have those opportunities where they live. And Tom Cotton can't speak to any of those things. All he does is talk about wanting to invade Iran, and that's pretty much it. But if people will keep us in mind, keep our message in mind, and spread it out there, and obviously, again, donate to the campaign, please.
Are there other issues that you would like to make sure that we talk about today?
I think those are my biggest ones, really are around sustainability, access to health care, comprehensive immigration reform, access to good paying jobs, and making sure that you're earning a wage equal to your hard work. I think a living wage is very important in our country. I do think that a living wage is different in a place like Chicago than it is in my hometown of El Dorado. I think that probably should be based off cost of living to some degree, but people need to be able to work 40 hours and know that they're going to be able to provide for themselves and their family and have a little bit of money left to save over. But, those are my focuses. And, I'm always happy to visit about anything else and do the right thing. One of the things that I always talk about, when you do the right thing, you tend to make more money. You tend to save money. It's just like being smart with saving. When we invest in the environment, when we invest in sustainability, we save money for consumers when they go to the grocery store and when they pay all their bills. And I think if you're pro-business, you ought to be pro-environment.
All right. Well, excellent. Josh, thank you so much for speaking with me today. I'm super excited by everyone who is stepping up to run for Senate all over the country. And I hope people will check out your campaign. We'll put links up on our website so people can find your social media and your website.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I sure do appreciate visiting with you. And if y'all ever need anything from me, let me know.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Wethlin and was created for use by this podcast.